In the quiet village of St. Mary's Mead, a master locksmith lies dead in his locked shop, poisoned, with the only key vanished. Hercule Poirot unravels a web of secrets. A bitter rival, a scorned customer, and a scheming apprentice, each hiding motives of greed and betrayal. A hidden key, stolen designs, and a trace of cyanide lead to a shocking truth. Will Poirot unlock the killer's identity before the trail goes cold? Chapter 1. The Locked Shop. The mist clung to the cobblestones of St. Mary's Mead like a gossamer shroud, softening the edges of the village's quaint shops and cottages. Hercule Poirot, his patent leather shoes clicking with precise rhythm, navigated the narrow lane toward the heart of the village. The air was sharp, with the scent of damp leaves and wood smoke, a November morning that promised secrets. His visit to this sleepy corner of England had been intended as a brief respite from the clamor of London, but fate, as Poirot often remarked, had a way of summoning him to the scene of a crime. At the end of the lane stood the shop of Gideon Locke, locksmith extraordinaire. Its sign, a polished brass key suspended above the door, gleaming faintly through the fog. A small crowd had gathered, their murmurs low and anxious, held back by a constable's outstretched arm. Inspector Japp, his overcoat buttoned against the chill, spotted Poirot and waved him forward with a mixture of relief and exasperation. "Monsieur Poirot," Japp called, his breath visible in the cold air. "You've a knack for turning up when things get peculiar. We've a proper puzzle here. Gideon Locke, dead in his shop, door locked from the inside, and the blasted key nowhere to be found." Poirot's green eyes sparkled beneath the brim of his immaculate hat. "Locked from the inside, you say? And the key? It has vanished? C'est magnifique. A mystery that demands the attention of Hercule Poirot." The constable, a ruddy-faced youth named Perkins, unlocked the shop door with a spare key from Gideon's home, kept by his sister. The bell above the door jingled mournfully as Poirot stepped inside, his cane tapping the worn floorboards. The shop was a labyrinth of craftsmanship, shelves lined with keys of every size, from delicate filigree to sturdy iron, a workbench cluttered with files, pliers, and half-assembled locks, and the faint metallic tang of oil and brass in the air. At the center of it all lay Gideon Locke, slumped over his workbench, his head resting on a ledger as if he had merely fallen asleep mid-task. A glass of water, half empty, stood beside him, its surface undisturbed. Dr. Hargrove, the village physician, was already present, his bag open on a nearby stool. He straightened as Poirot approached, wiping his hands on a handkerchief. "Cyanide, I'd wager," he said, his voice low. "The smell's unmistakable. Bitter almonds. Poor chap didn't suffer long, but it's a nasty way to go." Poirot leaned forward, his mustache twitching as he studied the body. Gideon was in his late 50s, his hair graying, but his hands still strong, marked by the calluses of his trade. His face, frozen in a grimace, suggested surprise rather than fear. Poirot's gaze moved to the glass, noting a faint residue at its base, then to the workbench, where a single key blank lay beside a set of precision tools. "The door, Inspector," Poirot said, turning to Japp. "You are certain it was locked?" "Dead certain," Japp replied. "Perkins had to fetch the spare from Miss Locke. The lock's one of Gideon's own. Fancy thing, impossible to pick, or so he claimed. No sign of tampering either." Poirot crossed to the door, examining the lock with care. It was a masterpiece, its mechanism intricate, requiring a key of unique design. He tested the bolt, finding it smooth and unforced. The shop's single window, high and narrow, was bolted shut, its latch rusted from disuse. The walls, lined with shelves, offered no hidden passages. The room was a sealed box, and yet the key was gone. "Curious," Poirot murmured, his fingers brushing the door frame. "A man dies, the door is locked, and the key vanishes. This is not a crime of impulse, but of calculation." Japp scratched his chin. "We've rounded up a few suspects. Silas Thorne, a rival locksmith from Upper Renford. His business was floundering because of Gideon's reputation. Clara Wren, a customer who had a row with him over a delayed order. And Tom Baxter, the apprentice. Lad's been with Gideon for years, but there's talk he was restless." Poirot nodded, his mind already turning. "The key, Inspector, is the heart of this enigma. Without it, the door could not be locked. Yet it is not here, nor on the person of the deceased. We must find where it has gone, and why." He returned to the workbench, his eyes catching a faint scratch near the edge, barely visible in the morning light filtering through the fogged window. Beside it, a trace of wax clung to the wood, overlooked by the initial inspection. Poirot's lips curved slightly. "The little details, mon ami," he said to Japp, who was watching him with a mix of curiosity and impatience. "They are the threads that unravel the tapestry of crime." As the constable began to cover Gideon's body, Poirot stepped back, his mind alight with possibilities. The locked shop, the missing key, the poison in the glass. These were not mere facts, but pieces of a puzzle that demanded order. And order, as Hercule Poirot knew, was the foundation of all solutions. Chapter 2. The Suspects. The village inn of St. Mary's Mead, the Green Dragon, stood as a bastion of warmth against the creeping November chill. Its low-beamed ceiling, polished oak tables, and the crackle of a fire in the hearth lent an air of coziness that belied the grim purpose of Hercule Poirot's visit. The inn's parlor, requisitioned by Inspector Japp for the morning's interrogations, was a small room adorned with faded chintz curtains and a portrait of a stern-faced squire glaring down from above the mantel. Poirot, seated in a high-backed chair, adjusted his gloves with meticulous care, his green eyes bright with anticipation. The locked shop and the vanished key had stirred his little gray cells, and now the suspects awaited his scrutiny. Inspector Japp, pacing near the window, was in a state of restless energy. His notebook lay open on the table, filled with hasty scrawls about the 3 individuals tied to Gideon Locke's death. "We've got a fine trio here, Poirot," he said, his voice tinged with exasperation. "Silas Thorne, Clara Wren, and Tom Baxter, each with a reason to want Gideon out of the way, but that locked door. Blast it, it's a devil of a thing." Poirot inclined his head, his mustache curving slightly. "The door, mon ami, is but the frame of the picture. The true image lies in the hearts of those who knew Monsieur Locke. Let us meet these suspects and see what shadows they cast." Japp nodded to the constable, Perkins, who stood guard at the door. "Bring in Mr. Thorne first." Silas Thorne entered with the heavy tread of a man accustomed to dominating a room. He was a broad-shouldered figure in his late 40s, his face weathered by years of labor and resentment. His coat, patched at the elbows, spoke of a business less prosperous than Gideon's, and his eyes, dark and narrowed, darted about the parlor as if seeking an escape. He sat heavily in the chair opposite Poirot, crossing his arms with a grunt. "Mr. Thorne," Poirot began, his voice smooth as polished silver. "You are a locksmith, oui? From Upper Renford, a mere 5 miles from this village. Tell me, what was your relationship with Monsieur Gideon Locke?" Thorne's jaw tightened, and he leaned forward, his voice low and gravelly. "Relationship? We weren't friends, if that's what you mean. Gideon was the best locksmith in the county. Everyone knew it. His work put mine in the shade. Customers came to him, not me. But I didn't kill him, if that's what you're driving at." Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on the arm of his chair. "A rival, then. One whose livelihood suffered because of Monsieur Locke's skill. Did this not breed resentment?" Thorne's face reddened, but he held Poirot's gaze. "I won't lie. I didn't like the man. He was smug, always boasting about his clever locks. But I was in my shop last night, working late. Ask anyone in Upper Renford. My lights were on till past midnight." Poirot made a small gesture, as if filing the statement away. "And this shop of yours, it is visible from the street, yes? A neighbor might confirm your presence." "Aye," Thorne said, relaxing slightly. "Mrs. Carter, across the road. She's always peeking out her window. She'll tell you I was there." "Bon," Poirot said, though his tone held a note of skepticism. "And did you ever visit Monsieur Locke's shop, perhaps to discuss his methods, his designs?" Thorne's eyes flickered, a brief shadow crossing his face. "Once or twice, years ago. He didn't share his secrets, and I didn't ask. His locks were his own, and I've got my own way of doing things." Poirot nodded, dismissing Thorne with a wave. As the man lumbered out, Poirot turned to Japp. "A man of pride, this Thorne. His alibi, it is convenient, but we must verify its, how do you say, watertightness." Japp scribbled a note. "I'll send Perkins to Upper Renford to check with this Mrs. Carter. Next up, Miss Clara Wren." Clara Wren entered the parlor with the precision of a metronome, her steps measured and her posture rigid. She was a woman in her early 40s, her brown hair pulled into a severe bun, her gray dress buttoned to the throat. Her face, though not unattractive, was set in a perpetual frown, as if life had dealt her a series of minor but persistent disappointments. She carried a small reticule, which she clutched tightly as she sat, her eyes fixed on Poirot with a mixture of defiance and unease. "Mademoiselle Wren," Poirot began, his tone courteous but probing, "you were a customer of Monsieur Locke. There was, I understand, a disagreement?" Clara's lips thinned. "Disagreement is putting it mildly, Mr. Poirot. Gideon Locke promised me a custom lock for my safe, a lock to secure my late father's jewels, which are all I have left of him. He delayed, week after week, with excuses about its complexity. I confronted him 2 days ago, in front of half the village, I'll admit, but I did not kill him." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes narrowing slightly. "This confrontation, it was heated, yes? What exactly did you say to Monsieur Locke?" Clara's cheeks flushed, but she held her ground. "I called him unreliable, a man who cared more for his reputation than his promises. He laughed, and said I'd have my lock when it was ready. I was humiliated. But murder? I am a respectable woman, sir." "Respectability," Poirot said softly, "is a mask that many wear. Tell me, mademoiselle, did you visit the shop after this quarrel, perhaps to press your case further?" "Never," Clara snapped, her voice sharp. "I stayed home that evening, as I always do. My maid, Elsie, can vouch for me. I was mending linens until bedtime." Poirot's gaze lingered on her reticule, noting the way her fingers tightened around it. "And this safe of yours? It contains jewels of great value, oui? Were you concerned that Monsieur Locke's delay might endanger them? Clara hesitated, her eyes flickering to the side. They are sentimental. My father's legacy. I needed that lock to protect them from thieves. That's all. Poirot made a small, non-committal sound and dismissed her. As she left, her steps brisk but unsteady, he turned to Jap. Mademoiselle Wren is a woman of strong feelings, perhaps stronger than she admits. Her alibi, too, must be examined. A maid's loyalty can be persuaded. Jap nodded, jotting another note. Last one, then, Tom Baxter, the apprentice. Tom Baxter entered the parlor with the air of a young man caught out of his depth. He was no more than 22, slight of build, with sandy hair and a face that might have been boyish were it not for the nervous twitch in his jaw. His hands, stained with ink and scarred from his work, fidgeted as he sat, avoiding Poirot's piercing gaze. "Monsieur Baxter," Poirot said, his voice gentle but firm. "You were Monsieur Locke's apprentice, his trusted assistant. Tell me about your master." Tom swallowed, his eyes darting to Jap, then back to the floor. Mr. Locke was a genius. His locks were like nothing else. He taught me a lot, but he was strict, expected perfection. I tried to please him, I swear. Poirot's head tilted, his mustache quivering as he studied the young man. "And were you content, working under such a master? Or did you perhaps desire more responsibility, more recognition?" Tom's fingers twisted together. I wanted to learn. He was going to make me a partner, maybe, in time. But he didn't share everything. His best designs he kept locked away. "Locked away," Poirot repeated, his tone thoughtful. "And this missing key, the one to the shop door, did you ever handle it?" Tom's face paled, and he shook his head vigorously. "No, sir. Mr. Locke kept it on him, always. It was special, made for that lock alone. I don't know where it's gone." Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the slight tremor in Tom's voice. "You were in the shop yesterday, oui? What did you see? What did you do? In the hours before Monsieur Locke's death?" "I left at 6, Tom said quickly. "We'd been working on a new lock for Lord Ashby's manor. I tidied up, then went home. Mr. Locke was still there, alive and well. That's the truth." Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. "The truth, Monsieur Baxter, is a delicate thing. It reveals itself only to those who seek it with care. You may go." As Tom hurried out, his shoulders hunched, Poirot turned to Jap, who was watching with a skeptical frown. "That lad's hiding something," Jap said. "Did you see how he squirmed when you mentioned the key?" "Indeed," Poirot said, his voice low. "He is nervous, but is it the nervousness of guilt or merely of youth? We must observe him closely." The parlor grew quiet, save for the crackle of the fire. Poirot rose, pacing slowly, his cane tapping a rhythm on the floor. "3 suspects, Inspector, each with a motive. Monsieur Thorne, whose business was eclipsed by Gideon's success. Mademoiselle Wren, whose pride was wounded by a broken promise. And young Baxter, who perhaps chafed under his master's shadow. But the key, the locked door, these are the locks that guard the truth." Jap closed his notebook with a snap. "I'll have Perkins dig into their alibis. Thorne's neighbor, Clara's maid, and Tom's lodgings. We'll turn them upside down. But that key, Poirot, where the devil is it?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The key, mon ami, is not merely a piece of metal. It is the symbol of access, of trust, of betrayal. Someone took it, or hid it, to obscure the method of this crime. We must reconstruct the scene. Tell me, what do we know of the shop's layout? Japp described the shop in detail. The single door with its unique lock, the bolted window, the workbench cluttered with tools and key blanks, the shelves of finished locks and keys. There was a small back room used for storage, but it had no external access. The shop was a fortress, designed by a man who understood security better than most. Poirot listened intently, his mind painting the scene. And the glass of water, Inspector, where was it placed? On the workbench, right beside Gideon, Japp said. The doctor said the cyanide was likely in the water. No other food or drink in the shop, and the water jug was clean. Poirot nodded, his thoughts racing. The poison, the key, the locked door, these are not separate elements, but parts of a single design. Someone entered the shop, poisoned Monsieur Locke, locked the door, and made the key disappear. But how, and why? He paused, his gaze distant. We must return to the shop, Inspector. The answers lie there, in the details overlooked. The scratch on the workbench, the trace of wax. These are the whispers of the crime. Japp sighed, rubbing his temples. You and your details, Poirot. But I'll grant you've a nose for them. I'll have the shop ready for you this afternoon. In the meantime, I'll start on those alibis. As Japp left to organize his men, Poirot remained in the parlor, his eyes fixed on the fire. The suspects had each told a story, but stories, as Poirot knew, were like locks. They could be crafted to conceal as much as they revealed. Silas Thorne's pride, Clara Wren's indignation, Tom Baxter's unease. Each was a thread in the tapestry of motive. But the key, the vanished key, was the needle that would stitch the truth together. Poirot adjusted his hat and stepped into the misty street, his mind alight with the challenge. The village of St. Mary's Mead, with its quiet lanes and hidden secrets, was now a stage, and Hercule Poirot was determined to bring its drama to light. Chapter 3. The Craft of Locks. The afternoon sun pierced the mist over St. Mary's Mead, casting a pale glow through the grimy window of Gideon Locke's shop. Hercule Poirot stood at the threshold, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his eyes surveying the scene with the precision of a watchmaker. The shop, though small, was a testament to its late owner's artistry. Shelves brimmed with keys of every conceivable design, from ornate to utilitarian, while the workbench held tools so finely crafted they seemed extensions of Gideon's own hands. The air carried a faint metallic tang, mingled with the mustiness of old wood, and the silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath Poirot's polished shoes. Inspector Japp, standing near the door, shifted impatiently. "We've been over this place twice, Poirot," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. "No sign of that blasted key, no forced entry, no hidden compartments, nothing but tools and locks. What are you hoping to find?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Mon ami, you search for what is seen, but Hercule Poirot seeks what is unseen. The truth lies not in the obvious, but in the subtle, the misplaced detail, the shadow that does not align." He moved to the workbench where Gideon had met his end. The ledger, still open to a page of meticulous notes, listed recent orders. A set of cabinet locks for the vicarage, a safe lock for Miss Clara Wren, and a complex mechanism for Lord Ashby's manor. Beside the ledger lay a key blank, its edges untouched by the file, and a scattering of tools, a small hammer, a set of chisels, a loop for fine work. Poirot's fingers hovered over the surface, pausing at the faint scratch he had noted earlier, a delicate arc no longer than a thumbnail. Nearby, a trace of wax clung to the wood, its texture soft and pliable, as if recently melted. "Curieux," Poirot murmured, producing a small magnifying glass from his pocket. He bent closer, the lens revealing the scratch's precision, a deliberate mark, not the careless graze of a tool. The wax, too, was telling, a pale, creamy residue, distinct from the polish used on the workbench. "This wax, Inspector, it is not for sealing letters or polishing wood. It is for molding, perhaps for a key." Japp's eyebrows rose. "Molding a key? You think someone made a copy?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, straightening. "But if so, why hide the original? The key to this lock," he gestured to the shop's door, "is unique, designed by Monsieur Locke himself. Its absence is not an accident, but a statement." He turned his attention to the door's lock, a marvel of engineering with a double tumbler mechanism that required a key of exacting specifications. Poirot tested the bolt, finding it smooth and unyielding, its craftsmanship flawless. "This lock," he said, "is a fortress. Only its key could secure it from the inside, yet the key is gone, and Monsieur Locke is dead. The contradiction is exquisite." Japp rubbed his chin. "The doctor's sure about the cyanide, ingested, not inhaled. That glass of water on the bench was the only thing near him. But how'd the poison get in it, and who locked the door?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The poison, the key, the lock, these are the trinity of our mystery. Let us consider the man himself, Gideon Locke. What do we know of his habits, his work?" Japp gestured to the constable, Perkins, who had returned from checking alibis. Perkins spoke to Gideon's sister, Miss Margaret Locke. She says Gideon was a solitary sort, devoted to his craft, rarely left the shop before 9, often worked late, kept his best designs in a notebook, locked in a safe in the back room. He was secretive, didn't trust easily. Poirot nodded, his gaze drifting to the back room's door, a simple wooden panel with a basic lock. "This notebook, it is of interest. Let us see this safe." The back room was cramped, its shelves stacked with boxes of key blanks, spools of wire, and jars of screws. A small iron safe stood in the corner, its surface scuffed but sturdy. Japp produced a key from Miss Locke, explaining that she had kept a spare for emergencies. The safe opened with a reluctant groan, revealing nothing. The interior was bare, save for a faint dusting of rust. "Empty," Japp said, his voice flat. "If there was a notebook, someone's taken it." Poirot's fingers traced the safe's edges, his expression unreadable. "The notebook is gone, yet the safe is undamaged. This suggests access, not theft by force. Someone knew where to look and how to open it." He returned to the workbench, his mind turning over the details. The scratch, the wax, the empty safe. These were not random, but pieces of a deliberate design. He picked up the ledger, flipping through its pages. Gideon's handwriting was precise, each entry detailing a client, a lock, a deadline. One entry caught his eye. "Ashby Manor, triple tumbler lock, unique key, delivery 15th November. The date was 2 days hence. "This lock for Lord Ashby," Poirot said, tapping the page. "It was Monsieur Locke's latest project, We must speak to his apprentice, Tom Baxter, about its progress." Japp nodded, summoning Perkins to fetch Tom. While they waited, Poirot examined the tools on the bench, noting their arrangement. A small vise held a half-finished key, its teeth partially cut, as if Gideon had been interrupted. Poirot's fingers brushed the vise, then paused. Beneath it, a faint smudge of ink stained the wood. Not the black of Gideon's pen, but a bluish hue, fresh and distinct. "Another detail," Poirot said softly, his eyes narrowing. "Ink, not from the ledger. Someone else was here, perhaps writing, perhaps copying." Tom Baxter arrived, his face pale and his hands shoved deep into his pockets. The young man's eyes darted to the workbench, then away, as if afraid of what it might reveal. Poirot gestured for him to sit on a stool near the bench, his manner calm but piercing. "Monsieur Baxter," Poirot began, "you worked closely with your master. Tell me about this lock for Lord Ashby. It was important, non?" Tom nodded, his voice hesitant. "It was special. Mr. Locke called it his masterpiece, a triple tumbler, impossible to pick. The key was one of a kind, took weeks to craft. He finished it yesterday, I think." "And this key," Poirot said, leaning forward. "You saw it? Held it, perhaps?" Tom's fingers twitched. "I saw it, yes. He kept it on a chain, round his neck, never let it out of his sight, but I didn't touch it, I swear." Poirot's gaze held Tom's, unyielding. "And the notebook, the one with Monsieur Locke's designs? Did you ever see it?" Tom swallowed, his eyes flickering to the safe. "Once or twice. He'd sketch in it, late at night, kept it locked away, said it was his legacy." "His legacy," Poirot repeated, his tone thoughtful. "And now it is gone, as is the key. Tell me, Monsieur Baxter, what did you do after you left the shop yesterday?" "I went home," Tom said quickly. "Had supper, read a bit, went to bed. My landlady, Mrs. Pike, can tell you I didn't leave." Poirot dismissed him with a nod, but his mind was already elsewhere. He turned to Japp. "The apprentice knows more than he says, but is it guilt or fear that makes him tremble? We must verify his movements. And this notebook, it is the heart of the matter. Its theft suggests a motive beyond mere vengeance." Japp scratched his head. "You think someone killed Gideon for his designs? Thorne, maybe? He'd profit from them." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his voice low. "But the key, Inspector, the key is the enigma. It was not taken to escape, for the door was locked from within. It was hidden or destroyed to obscure the truth." He stepped back, his eyes sweeping the shop once more. The scratch, the wax, the ink, the empty safe. These were the threads of a tapestry, woven with care. "We must return to the suspects, Inspector," Poirot said. "Their stories, their alibis, must be tested, and we must find this notebook, for it holds the secret of the vanished key." As they left the shop, the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows over St. Mary's Mead. Poirot's mind buzzed with possibilities, each detail a step toward clarity. The craft of locks, he knew, was not merely a matter of metal and mechanics. It was a dance of trust and betrayal, and Hercule Poirot was determined to master its steps. Chapter 4. The Rival's Alibi. The road to Upper Renford wound through fields dusted with frost, the late afternoon sun casting a golden haze over the hedgerows. Hercule Poirot, seated beside Captain Hastings in a hired trap, adjusted his scarf against the bite of the November air. The village of St. Mary's Mead lay behind them, its mystery unresolved, and Poirot's mind was a whirl of details. The scratch on the workbench, the trace of wax, the absent key. Now, their destination was the shop of Silas Thorne, Gideon Locke's rival, whose alibi hung like a loose thread in the fabric of the case. Hastings, ever the loyal companion, glanced at Poirot with a mix of curiosity and impatience. "I say, Poirot, this Thorne fellow seems a rough sort. Do you really think he could have slipped into Gideon's shop, poisoned him, and made off with the key? That lock was a beast. Gideon's own design, wasn't it? Poirot's green eyes glinted beneath the brim of his hat. Mon cher Hastings, the lock is indeed formidable, but the human heart is more complex. Monsieur Thorne's resentment of Gideon Locke is clear, but resentment alone does not a murderer make. We must test his alibi, for it is in the gaps of such stories that the truth hides. They arrived at Upper Renford, a bustling market town larger than Saint. Mary's Mead, but lacking its quaint charm. Thorne's shop stood on a busy street, its sign, a tarnished anvil and key, swaying in the breeze. The windows were smudged, the display of locks haphazard compared to Gideon's meticulous arrangements. Inside, the shop was a clutter of tools, half-finished keys, and a faint smell of rust and oil. Silas Thorne stood behind a counter, filing a key blank with aggressive strokes, his broad shoulders hunched as if carrying a grudge. "Monsieur Thorne," Poirot said, stepping forward with a courteous nod. "We meet again. I wish to discuss your movements on the night of Monsieur Locke's death." Thorne set down his file, his dark eyes narrowing. "I told you at the inn. I was here, working late. My shop's lights were on till midnight. Mrs. Carter, my neighbor across the street, saw them. What more do you want?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Precision, monsieur. The truth is a delicate mechanism, and I seek its exact workings. You were alone, you say, with no one to confirm your presence inside the shop?" Thorne's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists. "I don't need a nursemaid to watch me work. I was here, that's all. Gideon's death doesn't change my books or my business." Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the uneven floor. He paused at a shelf of locks, their designs simpler than Gideon's, their craftsmanship lacking the same finesse. "Your business, Monsieur Thorne, it has suffered, non? Gideon Locke's reputation drew customers away. Did this not tempt you to seek his secrets, his designs, perhaps?" Thorne's face reddened, but he kept his voice steady. "I won't deny I envied his skill. His locks were the talk of the county. Lords and merchants clamored for them. But I didn't need to kill him to get by. I've my own trade, my own customers." Poirot's eyes lingered on a workbench in the corner where a pile of sketches lay beneath a cloth. He lifted the cloth, revealing crude drawings of lock mechanisms, some resembling Gideon's style, but lacking their elegance. "These sketches," Poirot said, his tone mild. "They are ambitious. Did you ever discuss such designs with Monsieur Locke?" Thorne moved quickly, snatching the sketches and shoving them into a drawer. "Those are mine," he snapped. "I don't need Gideon's ideas. He was tight-fisted with his work, never shared a thing. If I wanted his designs, I'd have bought them fair and square." "Indeed," Poirot said, his voice soft but probing. "And yet, his notebook of designs is missing. A valuable prize, would you not agree?" Thorne's eyes flickered, a shadow of unease crossing his face. "I don't know anything about a notebook. If it's gone, maybe his apprentice took it. That lad, Tom, was always sniffing around Gideon's work." Poirot noted the deflection but said nothing, turning instead to the shop's layout. A narrow door led to a back alley, its lock simple and easily opened. "This door," he said, "it is not as secure as the front. One could leave unnoticed, perhaps to visit Saint." "Mary's Mead?" Thorne bristled. "I told you. I was here. Ask Mrs. Carter. She's got eyes like a hawk." Poirot nodded, dismissing Thorne's protest with a wave. "We shall speak to this Madame Carter. Her testimony is, as you say, essential." Leaving the shop, Poirot and Hastings crossed the street to Mrs. Carter's cottage, a tidy dwelling with lace curtains and a garden of late blooming roses. Mrs. Carter, a plump woman in her 60s with a penchant for gossip, welcomed them eagerly. "Oh, Mr. Poirot, what a dreadful business about poor Gideon," she said, ushering them into a parlor stuffed with doilies and porcelain figurines. "I heard you were helping the police. Such a clever man, they say." Poirot inclined his head, accepting the compliment with grace. "Madame, you are a neighbor of Monsieur Thorne. On the night of Gideon Locke's death, you saw his shop's lights, oui?" Mrs. Carter nodded vigorously. "Oh, yes, I was up late, knitting by the window. Silas's shop was lit up till nearly midnight. He's often at it late, you know, trying to keep up with orders." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you saw Monsieur Thorne himself, inside the shop?" Mrs. Carter hesitated, her fingers twisting a handkerchief. "Well, not exactly. I saw the lights and his shadow moving now and then. My window faces the shop's front, you see. I couldn't say for certain he was there the whole time, but where else would he be?" Hastings glanced at Poirot, catching the significance of her words. Poirot's expression remained serene, but his mind was alight. "Merci, Madame Carter. Your observation is most helpful." As they stepped back into the street, Hastings could not contain his excitement. "Poirot, her story leaves a gap. Thorne could have slipped out the back door, gone to St. Mary's Mead, and returned without her noticing. It's only 5 miles. A fast horse could manage it." Poirot nodded, his cane tapping a thoughtful rhythm. "Indeed, mon ami, the alibi is not as solid as Monsieur Thorne believes. The back door, the unseen hours, these are the spaces where secrets hide. But we must consider, if Thorne went to the shop, how did he enter? The lock was untouched, the key missing." Hastings frowned. "Could he have had a copy of the key? You mentioned that wax in Gideon's shop. Perhaps a mold?" Poirot's mustache curved. "A possibility, Hastings, but to make a copy requires access, intimacy with the original. Thorne claims he rarely visited Gideon's shop. We must explore this further." They returned to St. Mary's Mead as dusk settled, the village lights twinkling like stars against the darkening sky. Poirot's thoughts turned to the other suspects. Clara Wren's indignation, Tom Baxter's unease, each added layers to the mystery. But Thorne's alibi, with its fragile reliance on a neighbor's partial view, was a crack in the case's foundation. At the Green Dragon, Inspector Japp awaited them, his face weary but expectant. "Well, Poirot, what did you find in Upper Renford?" Poirot settled into a chair, his fingers steepled. "Monsieur Thorne's alibi is like a lock with a hidden flaw. It appears secure, but it can be opened. Mrs. Carter saw lights, not the man himself. The back door of his shop offers a path to St. Mary's Mead, unnoticed. But the question remains. Did he have the means to enter Gideon's shop, to poison the water, to lock the door?" Japp leaned forward, his notebook open. "You're thinking he's our man?" "Not yet, Inspector," Poirot said, his voice low. "The heart of this crime is the key. Its absence is deliberate, a gesture of misdirection. Thorne may have desired Gideon's designs, but so might others. We must examine the apprentice's movements, the customer's grievance. The truth is a mosaic, and we have only a few tiles." Japp sighed, rubbing his eyes. "I've got Perkins checking Tom's lodgings and Clara's maid. Maybe we'll turn up something. Poison, a key, that notebook." Poirot rose, his expression resolute. "Bon, let us continue, Inspector. The rival's alibi is tested, but the puzzle is far from solved. Tomorrow we shall visit Mademoiselle Wren. Her story, too, must face the light of Hercule Poirot's scrutiny. As they parted, the inn's fire cast flickering shadows on the walls, mirroring the shifting uncertainties of the case. Poirot's mind, however, was a beacon of order, piecing together the fragments of a crime that, like a lock, would yield only to the right key. Chapter 5. The Customer's Grievance. The morning mist had lifted over St. Mary's Mead, leaving the village bathed in a crisp, pale light that sharpened the outlines of its cottages and lanes. Hercule Poirot, accompanied by Captain Hastings, made his way along a quiet path to the modest home of Miss Clara Wren. The cottage, with its neatly trimmed rose bushes and spotless windows, stood as a testament to its owner's fastidious nature. Yet Poirot, his cane tapping a steady rhythm on the gravel, sensed that beneath this orderly facade lay currents of discontent that might illuminate the mystery of Gideon Locke's death. Hastings, ever eager, adjusted his hat and glanced at Poirot. Clara Wren seems an unlikely murderer, Poirot. A spinster with a grudge over a delayed lock. It's a bit thin, don't you think? Poirot's green eyes twinkled. Mon cher Hastings, the smallest grievance can spark the greatest crime when pride is wounded. Mademoiselle Wren's anger, it is not merely about a lock, it is about respect, or the lack of it. We shall see what her heart reveals. The door opened before they could knock, revealing Clara Wren herself, her gray dress as severe as her expression. Her eyes, sharp and wary, assessed Poirot with a flicker of recognition from their meeting at the inn. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice clipped. "I expected you might call. Come in, but I've little time for nonsense." The parlor was a study in precision, lace doilies aligned with geometric exactness, a clock ticking with relentless regularity, and a single vase of chrysanthemums, adding a restrained touch of color. Clara gestured to a pair of straight-backed chairs, sitting opposite with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her reticule placed carefully on a side table. "Mademoiselle Wren," Poirot began, his tone courteous but probing. "You have expressed displeasure with Monsieur Gideon Locke over a delayed lock for your safe. This lock, it was to protect your father's jewels. Oui? Tell me, why was this matter so urgent?" Clara's lips pursed, her fingers tightening. "My father's jewels are all I have of him. Sapphires, a diamond brooch, a few pearls. They're not merely valuable, they're my legacy. Gideon promised a lock to secure my safe, but he kept me waiting, week after week. I needed it done to feel safe in my own home." Poirot leaned forward, his mustache quivering slightly. "And this delay, it led to a public quarrel, did it not? You confronted Monsieur Locke in the village square, before witnesses. What words passed between you?" Clara's cheeks flushed, but she held his gaze. "I told him he was a fraud, promising what he couldn't deliver. He laughed, and said I'd have my lock when he was ready. It was humiliating, Mr. Poirot. I'm a woman of standing in this village, and he treated me like a child." "Humiliation," Poirot said softly, "is a powerful motive. Did you perhaps visit his shop later that day to press your case?" Clara's eyes narrowed. "I did not. I returned home and stayed there. My maid, Elsie, can confirm I was here all evening, mending linens and sorting my accounts." Poirot's gaze drifted to the side table, where the reticule lay. Beside it stood a small bottle of cleaning fluid, its label faded but legible, emitting a faint chemical scent that pricked his senses. "This fluid, mademoiselle," he said, gesturing to it. "It is for household use. Oui? What is its purpose?" Clara followed his gaze, her expression tightening. "It's for cleaning silver, nothing more. Why do you ask?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A mere curiosity. In a case of poisoning, one notices such things. Tell me, did you ever handle chemicals in Monsieur Locke's shop, perhaps assisting with his work?" "Never," Clara snapped, her voice rising. "I was a customer, not his apprentice. I had no business touching his tools or anything else." Poirot nodded, his eyes catching a slight tremor in her hands. He rose, pacing slowly about the parlor, his cane tapping lightly. The room's orderliness spoke of a woman who controlled her environment with care, yet the tension in her posture suggested a struggle to maintain that control. He paused at a bookshelf, noting a volume on household chemistry among the novels and hymnals. "You are a woman of knowledge, mademoiselle," he said. "Do you study such subjects?" Clara's mouth tightened. "I read to improve myself. Is that a crime?" "Not at all," Poirot said, returning to his seat. "But knowledge, like a key, can open dangerous doors. Did you know of Monsieur Locke's notebook, the one containing his lock designs?" Clara hesitated, her eyes flickering to the side. "I heard rumors. He was secretive, always scribbling in that book, but I never saw it. My concern was my lock, nothing else." Poirot's fingers steepled, his mind turning over her words. "And yet, this notebook is missing, as is the key to the shop. Curious, non? If you have no further details, mademoiselle, we shall take our leave. But I may return, for the truth has a way of revealing itself." Clara rose, her movements stiff. "I've told you all I know. I'm no murderer, Mr. Poirot. Find the real culprit and leave me in peace." As they stepped into the crisp air, Hastings exhaled, his breath visible. "She's prickly, Poirot, but a poisoner. I can't see it. That cleaning fluid, though. Could it be connected to the cyanide?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The fluid is a point of interest, Hastings. Its scent, though faint, suggests a chemical not unlike those used in poison. But Mademoiselle Wren is clever. She would not leave such evidence in plain sight unless it were innocent or a deliberate misdirection. We must have it analyzed." They returned to the Green Dragon, where Inspector Japp awaited, his face etched with the strain of the investigation. "Any luck with Miss Wren?" he asked, pouring tea from a chipped pot. Poirot settled into a chair, his expression thoughtful. "Mademoiselle Wren is a woman of pride, wounded by Gideon's dismissal. Her alibi rests on her maid, whose loyalty we must question. The cleaning fluid in her parlor, it must be tested for traces of cyanide. And her knowledge, her books, they suggest a mind capable of more than she admits." Japp scribbled a note. "I'll send Perkins to collect that bottle discreetly. What about Thorne? His alibi's shaky, but Clara's seems tighter." "Tighter, perhaps," Poirot said, "but not unbreakable. The maid, Elsie, must be questioned, and we must consider the notebook. If Mademoiselle Wren desired it, not for profit, but to secure her jewels, it could explain much." Hastings leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "But the locked door, Poirot? How could Clara have managed that? She's no locksmith." Poirot's mustache curved. "The door, mon ami, is the heart of the puzzle. The key was inside, yet it vanished. This suggests someone with access, someone who knew Gideon's habits. Clara claims she never entered the shop after hours, but her anger, her need for control, these are motives that linger. Jap sighed, rubbing his temples. "I've got men searching Tom Baxter's lodgings. If that notebook or any chemicals turn up, we'll know more. But this case, Poirot, it's like trying to pick one of Gideon's locks." "Indeed," Poirot said, rising. "But every lock has a key, Inspector, and every crime a solution. We shall return to the shop tomorrow to seek the threads we have missed. For now, let us observe, let us think, and let the little gray cells do their work." As they left the inn, the village settled into evening, its lights glowing softly against the gathering dusk. Poirot's mind, however, was far from restful, weaving together the strands of Clara Wren's grievance, the chemical scent, and the ever-elusive key. The truth, he knew, was close, waiting to be unlocked by the precision of his intellect. Chapter 6. The Apprentice's Secret. The evening shadows stretched long across St. Mary's Mead, draping the village in a quiet that seemed to hold its breath. Hercule Poirot, his coat buttoned against the chill, walked with Captain Hastings toward the modest lodgings of Tom Baxter, Gideon Locke's apprentice. The narrow street, lined with cottages whose lamplight glowed through drawn curtains, offered a deceptive calm, for Poirot's mind was anything but serene. The mystery of the vanished key, the poisoned glass, and the missing notebook swirled in his thoughts, each detail a cog in a machine yet to be fully assembled. Hastings, ever the optimist, broke the silence. "Poirot, this Tom Baxter seems a nervous sort, doesn't he? All that fidgeting at the inn. Do you think he's hiding something more than just ambition?" Poirot's cane tapped a steady rhythm on the cobblestones. "Mon cher Hastings, the young Monsieur Baxter is like a lock with a hidden spring. Under pressure, he reveals more than he intends. His loyalty to Gideon Locke is proclaimed, yet his eyes betray unease. Tonight, we shall see what secrets his home conceals." Tom's lodgings were in a boarding house run by Mrs. Pike, a stout woman with a penchant for order rivaling Poirot's own. The house, a two-story affair with peeling paint, stood at the edge of the village, its front door flanked by a pair of wilting geraniums. Mrs. Pike greeted them with a wary nod, her apron dusted with flour from an evening's baking. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, wiping her hands. "Tom's in his room, but I'll warn you, he's been out of sorts since Mr. Locke's death." "Merci, madame," Poirot said, his voice smooth. "We shall be brief. May we see his room?" Mrs. Pike led them up a creaking staircase to a small door at the end of a dimly lit corridor. She knocked sharply, calling, "Tom, you visitors. Police business." A muffled reply came, and she opened the door, stepping aside. Tom Baxter stood by a narrow window, his sandy hair disheveled, his hands stuffed into his pockets. The room was sparse. A single bed with a threadbare quilt, a wooden chair, a small desk cluttered with papers, and a locked box tucked beneath the bed, its corner just visible. Tom's eyes darted to the box, then back to Poirot, a flush creeping up his neck. "Monsieur Baxter," Poirot began, seating himself on the chair with deliberate care. "You are, I understand, deeply affected by your master's death. Yet there are questions that must be answered. Tell me, what was your relationship with Monsieur Locke truly like?" Tom shifted, his voice low. "He was a good master, taught me everything I know. Strict, mind you, wanted every cut perfect, every lock flawless. But I respected him. I'd never hurt him." Poirot's green eyes fixed on Tom, unyielding. "Respect is a fine word, but ambition is a stronger force. You wish to be more than an apprentice, no? To have your own shop, perhaps to rival your master's fame." Tom's hands clenched. I wanted to learn, that's all. He said I had talent, that I'd take over the shop one day. But he kept his best work secret, those designs in his notebook. I never saw them, not properly. Poirot's gaze drifted to the locked box, its presence a silent challenge. And this box, Monsieur Baxter, what does it contain? Tools, perhaps? Or something more personal? Tom's face paled, and he stepped in front of the bed as if to shield the box. Just my things. Letters, a bit of money. Nothing to do with Mr. Locke. Poirot rose, his cane tapping lightly as he approached the desk. The papers were a jumble of receipts and rough sketches of locks, their lines crude but showing promise. One sheet, half hidden, bore a faint trace of blue ink, matching the smudge Poirot had noted in the shop. He lifted it, holding it to the light. This ink, it is unusual, non? Not the black of your master's ledger, but blue, fresh. Were you sketching designs, perhaps copying those of Monsieur Locke? Tom's eyes widened, his voice trembling. I was practicing, that's all, trying to understand his work. He'd show me bits, but never the whole. I wanted to learn. Learn, Poirot repeated, his tone soft but piercing. Or perhaps to profit. The notebook, Monsieur Baxter, it is missing. Did you take it? To sell its secrets to another, perhaps Monsieur Thorne? No, Tom burst out, his hands shaking. I'd never betray Mr. Locke. I didn't take the notebook. I swear. And the key. I don't know where it is. Poirot's mustache curved slightly. The key. It is the heart of this mystery. You say you left the shop at 6, leaving Monsieur Locke alive. Yet he was poisoned, the door locked, the key gone. Tell me, did you ever handle this key, even once? Tom shook his head vigorously. Never. It was always on him, on a chain round his neck. He didn't trust anyone with it, not even me. Poirot nodded, dismissing Tom's protest with a wave. We shall see, monsieur. For now, I ask that you permit Inspector Japp to examine this box. It may hold answers you do not wish to speak. Tom hesitated, his eyes darting to Mrs. Pike, who stood in the doorway, her expression stern. Fine, he muttered, retrieving a small key from his pocket and unlocking the box. Inside were more sketches, a few coins, and a bundle of letters tied with string. Poirot's fingers brushed the sketches, noting their similarity to Gideon's style, though less refined. One drawing, tucked at the bottom, depicted a lock mechanism with annotations in blue ink, its complexity rivaling the shop's door lock. These sketches, Poirot said, holding one up, they are ambitious for an apprentice. Did Monsieur Locke approve of such work? Tom's voice was barely a whisper. He didn't know. I drew them at night, here. I wanted to prove I could do it, that I was ready for more. Poirot handed the sketches to Hastings, who examined them with a frown. These look awfully like Gideon's work, Poirot. Could Tom have been copying to sell them? Perhaps, Poirot said, his eyes never leaving Tom. But copying requires opportunity, access. Monsieur Baxter, you will remain here while we continue our inquiries. The truth, it will not stay hidden long. As they left the boarding house, Hastings shook his head. That boy's in deep, Poirot. Those sketches, that ink, there's something off about him. Poirot's expression was thoughtful. Oui, Hastings. The apprentice has secrets, but are they the secrets of a murderer? The blue ink, it links him to the shop, yet his fear suggests more than guilt. We must learn more of his movements, his ambitions. They returned to the Green Dragon, where Inspector Japp was nursing a pint, his notebook open before him. Well, Poirot? He asked, looking up. What's the word from young Tom?" Poirot settled into a chair, his fingers steepled. "The Apprentice is a puzzle, Inspector. His sketches show talent, but also imitation. The blue ink matches that in the shop, a clue to his presence or his intent. The locked box, it reveals ambition, but not yet murder. We must verify his alibi with Madame Pike, and we must search for this notebook. Its absence is no accident." Jap nodded, scribbling a note. "I've got Perkins checking Clara Wren's maid and that cleaning fluid. If Tom's been copying designs, maybe he's working with Thorne. Or even Clara, though that's a stretch." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "All possibilities must be considered, mon ami. The Apprentice's secret is but one piece of the mosaic. The key, the poison, the notebook, these are the levers that will unlock the truth. Tomorrow we return to the shop, for its silent corners still whisper of the crime." As the inn's fire crackled, casting shadows on the walls, Poirot's mind worked tirelessly, piecing together the fragments of Tom Baxter's story. The Apprentice's ambition, his sketches, his unease. These were threads in a tapestry of deceit, and Hercule Poirot was determined to unravel it. Chapter 7. The Poison's Path. The morning light filtered through the leaded windows of the Green Dragon, casting a soft glow over the inn's parlor where Hercule Poirot sat, his breakfast untouched. His mind, ever active, churned through the details of Gideon Locke's death. The vanished key, the missing notebook, the faint scratch and wax on the workbench, the blue ink smudge. Each clue was a piece of a delicate mechanism, and now, with the confirmation of cyanide as the cause of death, the puzzle demanded a new focus, the path of the poison itself. Captain Hastings, sipping tea across the table, watched Poirot with a mixture of admiration and impatience. "Poirot," Hastings said, setting down his cup, "this cyanide business is grim. It's not exactly something you pick up at the village chemist. How on earth did it get into Gideon's glass, and who had access to it?" Poirot's green eyes flickered, his mustache twitching as he folded his napkin with precision. "Mon cher Hastings, the poison is the silent partner in this crime. Its presence in the glass suggests intimacy. Someone who could approach Monsieur Locke without arousing suspicion. We must trace its journey, from source to sip, to unlock the murderer's method." Inspector Jap entered the parlor, his face drawn from a sleepless night. He carried a small bundle of papers, his notebook tucked under his arm. "Morning, Poirot. Hastings," he said, sinking into a chair. "The doctor's report is final. Cyanide, no question. Ingested through that glass of water on the workbench. No other food or drink in the shop, and the water jug tested clean. Whoever did this added the poison directly to the glass." Poirot leaned forward, his fingers steepled. "Directly, you say? This is most significant, Inspector. The poisoner needed access to the glass, and thus to Monsieur Locke, at the moment of his trust. Tell me, what do we know of cyanide's availability in St. Mary's Mead?" Jap flipped open his notebook. "It's not common, but not impossible. Cyanide's used in small quantities by jewelers and metal workers. Gideon himself might have had some for cleaning brass or silver. We found none in the shop, though. I've got Perkins checking local suppliers, but it's a long shot. Could have been brought from outside." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "A metalworker, you say? This is interesting, for Monsieur Locke was a craftsman of precision, yet no cyanide was found in his shop. We must consider the suspects: Thorne, the rival, who works with metals; Mademoiselle Wren, with her curious cleaning fluid; and young Baxter, who knew the shop's every corner. Hastings frowned, stirring his tea. Clara's cleaning fluid? Could it be a source? You notice that chemical smell in her parlor, Poirot? Oui, Poirot said, his voice low. The fluid must be analyzed, Hastings. Its scent was sharp, not unlike cyanide's almond-like odor. But we must not leap to conclusions. The poison's path is a trail of opportunity, and we must follow it with care. Japp nodded, jotting a note. I've sent that bottle from Clara's parlor to the lab in London. Results should come tomorrow. In the meantime, I've got news from Tom's lodgings. Those sketches you saw, Poirot, they're copies of Gideon's designs, no doubt about it. Not perfect, but close. The lad's been practicing, maybe planning to sell them. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The sketches, they confirm ambition, but not yet murder. Did Perkins find anything else in Monsieur Baxter's room? A vial, perhaps, or traces of a chemical? Nothing yet, Japp said, shaking his head. But we're still looking. Mrs. Pike says Tom was home by 6:30 the night of the murder, eating supper and reading. Sounds solid, but I don't trust it. Poirot rose, his cane tapping as he paced the parlor. The alibis, they are like locks with worn pins, seemingly secure, yet vulnerable. We must return to the shop, Inspector, to examine the glass itself. Its secrets may tell us more than the suspect's words. They arrived at Gideon's shop as the village clock struck 10, its chime echoing over the cobblestones. The shop, now cordoned by a constable, felt colder, its silence heavier with the absence of its master. Poirot moved to the workbench where the glass of water still stood, its contents half evaporated. He donned a pair of gloves, lifting the glass with care, holding it to the light. A faint residue clung to its base, a cloudy film that caught his eye. This residue, Poirot said, his voice soft. It is not mere water. The cyanide was added here, in this glass, not in the jug. The poisoner acted swiftly, while Monsieur Locke was distracted, perhaps working on his lock for Lord Ashby. Japp peered over his shoulder. No fingerprints, I'm afraid. We checked. Whoever did this was careful, wore gloves, maybe, or wiped the glass. Poirot's mustache curved. Careful, yes, but not invisible. The poison required proximity, trust. Monsieur Locke did not suspect his visitor, or he would not have drunk. We must consider the timeline. Tom left at 6. Gideon was alive then. The doctor estimates death between 7 and 9. Our poisoner acted within that window. Hastings, standing by the shelves, picked up a key blank, turning it over. Could someone have slipped in after Tom left? The door was locked from the inside, though. How'd they manage that? Poirot's eyes narrowed, his gaze drifting to the lock on the shop door. The lock, mon ami, is the key to the method. Only Gideon's unique key could secure it from within, yet it is gone. This suggests the poisoner locked the door after the act, then hid the key to confuse us. But where? He moved to the workbench, his fingers brushing the faint scratch he had noted before. The wax trace beside it, now hardened, seemed to mock him. This wax, he said, it is for molding, perhaps for a key. But if a copy was made, why hide the original? The answer lies in misdirection. The murderer wished us to believe the key was taken, not hidden. Japp scratched his head. You're saying the key's still here, somewhere in the shop? Perhaps, Poirot said, his tone enigmatic. We must search again, with the eyes of suspicion. But first, we must question the maid, Elsie, to test Mademoiselle Wren's alibi. And we must learn more of Monsieur Thorne's access to chemicals. The poison's path will lead us to the hand that held it. They left the shop, locking it behind them, and made their way to Clara Wren's cottage. Elsie, a nervous girl of 19 with a habit of twisting her apron, met them at the door. "Miss Wren's out, sir," she said, her eyes darting between Poirot and Jap. "Gone to the market." "No matter," Poirot said, his voice soothing. "It is you we wish to speak with, Mademoiselle Elsie. On the night of Monsieur Locke's death, you say your mistress was home all evening. This is true?" Elsie nodded, her fingers tightening on the apron. "Yes, sir. She was here, mending linens till bedtime, around 10. I saw her myself in the parlor." Poirot's gaze was gentle but piercing. "And you, mademoiselle, were you with her the entire time? Or did you perhaps step out to the kitchen, to your room?" Elsie hesitated, her cheeks flushing. I was in and out, sir, doing chores, fetching tea, but Miss Wren didn't leave. I'd have heard the door." Poirot nodded, dismissing her with a smile. As they stepped back into the street, he turned to Jap. "The maid's loyalty is expected, but her testimony leaves gaps. Mademoiselle Wren could have left briefly, unnoticed. We must press further." Hastings, trailing behind, shook his head. "It's all so tangled, Poirot. The poison, the key, the notebook. How do they fit?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with resolve. "They fit, mon ami, because every crime has a pattern. The poison's path is clear. It was in the glass, delivered by one who knew Gideon's habits. The key, the notebook, these are the tools of deception. Tomorrow, we shall search the shop again, and we shall test the alibis with greater rigor. The truth, it is near, waiting for Hercule Poirot to claim it. As they returned to the inn, the village settled into midday, its rhythms undisturbed by the shadow of murder. But Poirot's mind was a beacon, illuminating the path of the poison, step by careful step, toward the heart of the crime. Chapter 8. The Hidden Design. The midday sun cast a feeble glow over St. Mary's Mead, its light barely warming the chill that lingered in the air. Hercule Poirot, accompanied by Captain Hastings and Inspector Jap, stood once more in the shadowed interior of Gideon Locke's shop. The space, with its shelves of gleaming keys and cluttered workbench, seemed to hold its secrets tightly, as if reluctant to yield to Poirot's probing intellect. The mystery of the vanished key, the poisoned glass, and the missing notebook had grown more intricate with each revelation, and now Poirot's little gray cells were focused on a single detail: the faint scratch and wax trace on the workbench, clues that whispered of a hidden design. Jap, his notebook tucked under his arm, surveyed the shop with a frown. "We've turned this place upside down, Poirot," he said, his voice tinged with exasperation. "No key, no notebook, no vial of cyanide. What are we missing?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed as he moved to the workbench, his gloved fingers brushing the surface where Gideon had met his end. "Mon ami, what we seek is not always in plain sight. The murderer has crafted a puzzle, and the workbench is its heart. This scratch, this wax, they are not accidents, but signs of intent." Hastings, standing near the shelves, peered at the workbench. "That scratch, Poirot, you think it's from a key? And the wax, a mold, perhaps? But why would someone make a copy and then hide the original?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Précisément, Hastings. The key was not taken to escape, for the door was locked from within. It was hidden to mislead us, to suggest an outsider's hand. But the wax, the scratch, these suggest preparation, a plan to replicate something of value." He produced his magnifying glass, bending low to examine the scratch. Its arc was precise, forming the faint outline of a key's blade, its edges sharp as if recently made. The wax, a creamy smear hardened in a small pool, bore the texture of a molding compound, pliable when warm. Poirot's fingers traced the mark, his mind racing. "This scratch," he said, "it is not random. It is the ghost of the key, pressed into the wood during a moment of haste or secrecy. And the wax, it was used to capture the key's form, perhaps to create a duplicate." Japp's eyebrows rose. "A duplicate key? That would explain how someone locked the door without the original. But where's the mold, and where's the copy?" Poirot straightened, his gaze sweeping the shop. "The mold may be gone, destroyed or hidden. The copy, if it exists, would be with the murderer. But the original key, its absence is deliberate. Let us search with fresh eyes, Inspector." They began a meticulous examination, Poirot directing Japp and Hastings to check the shelves, the back room, and the floorboards for hidden compartments. Poirot himself focused on the workbench, his fingers probing its edges, its drawers, its underside. He paused at a drawer filled with tools, noting a small file with a trace of wax caught in its teeth. "Interesting," he murmured, holding it up. "This file was used recently, perhaps to refine a molded key." Hastings, rummaging through a box of key blanks, looked up. "Poirot, if someone made a copy, they'd need time in the shop, wouldn't they? That points to Tom. He was here every day, knew Gideon's habits." "Oui," Poirot said, "but we must not assume too quickly. Monsieur Thorne, too, understands locks, and Mademoiselle Wren, though not a craftsman, is resourceful. We must consider all possibilities." Japp, emerging from the back room, held up a small brass screw. "Found this under a shelf. Doesn't match anything in the shop. Could be from something dismantled, maybe a hiding place." Poirot took the screw, turning it over in his gloved hand. "A fine observation, Inspector. It suggests something was altered or concealed. Let us examine the safe again." The safe in the back room, its iron surface scuffed but unyielding, stood as a silent sentinel. Poirot opened it with the spare key from Miss Locke, revealing its empty interior. He ran his fingers along the inner edges, pausing at a faint seam in the back panel. With a gentle press, the panel shifted, revealing a shallow recess, empty, but bearing the faint outline of a notebook's shape. "The notebook," Poirot said, his voice low. "It was here, hidden even within the safe. Someone knew of this compartment, someone with intimate knowledge of Monsieur Locke's habits." Japp's eyes widened. "That's got to be Tom. He worked here, saw everything. He could have found the notebook, made a key mold, poisoned Gideon." Poirot raised a hand, his expression cautionary. "Patience, Inspector. The notebook's absence confirms its value, but it does not yet name the thief. We must question Monsieur Baxter again, with precision." They summoned Tom to the shop, the young man arriving with a pallor that matched the gray sky outside. His hands trembled as he stood by the workbench, his eyes avoiding the spot where Gideon had died. "Monsieur Baxter," Poirot began, his tone deceptively mild, "you spoke of your master's notebook, the one containing his finest designs. You claim to have seen it only briefly. Yet, this safe?" He gestured to the back room. "Held a hidden compartment, now empty. Did you know of it?" Tom's face drained of color, his voice a whisper. "A compartment? No, sir, I swear. Mr. Locke never showed me such a thing. He kept the notebook locked in the safe. That's all I knew." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And this, wax, this scratch on the workbench, did you ever assist your master in molding a key, Perhaps for his work with Lord Ashby? Tom shook his head, his eyes darting to the workbench. No, never. He did that himself, said it was too delicate for me. I just cut blanks, filed teeth, basic work. Poirot stepped closer, holding up the file with the wax trace. This file, monsieur, bears wax like that on the workbench. Were you experimenting, perhaps, with your master's methods? Tom's hands clenched, his voice breaking. I tried once to make a mold, just to learn. But I didn't take the key, and I didn't touch the notebook. Poirot's mustache curved, his eyes piercing. You tried, you say? And where is this mold you made? Tom's shoulders slumped. I threw it out. It didn't work. I was no good at it. Please, Mr. Poirot, I didn't kill him. Poirot dismissed him with a nod, turning to Japp and Hastings as Tom hurried out. The apprentice admits to ambition, to attempting a mold. This is progress, but not proof. The notebook, the key, these are still hidden, and their hiding is the murderer's shield. Japp rubbed his temples. We're getting closer, Poirot, but it's like chasing shadows. I've got results coming on Clara's cleaning fluid. Maybe that'll give us something solid. Hastings, holding the brass screw, frowned. This screw, Poirot, could it be from the workbench itself? Maybe part of a hidden drawer? Poirot's eyes lit up. An excellent thought, Hastings. Let us examine the workbench again. They returned to the workbench, Poirot's fingers probing its underside. After a moment, he found a faint ridge, barely perceptible. With a gentle push, a small panel slid open, revealing a shallow compartment. Empty, but lined with felt, as if designed to hold something precious. Voila, Poirot said, his voice triumphant. A hiding place, but empty. The key, perhaps, was kept here before it vanished. Japp's jaw dropped. Blimey, Poirot, you've got a nose for this, but if the key was here, where is it now? Poirot's expression was resolute. That, Inspector, is the question. The hidden design, the scratch, the wax, the compartment, points to a plan, a theft of knowledge. The murderer locked the door, hid the key, and took the notebook to obscure their intent. We must press the suspects further, for one of them holds the final piece. As they left the shop, the village clock tolled, its sound a reminder of time slipping away. Poirot's mind, however, was a beacon of clarity, weaving the threads of the hidden design into a pattern that would soon reveal the truth. Chapter 9. The Alibi Unravels. The late afternoon sun dipped low over St. Mary's Mead, casting long shadows that stretched across the village like fingers reaching for secrets. Hercule Poirot, accompanied by Captain Hastings and Inspector Japp, stood in the parlor of the Green Dragon, their faces reflecting the weight of a case that grew more intricate with each passing hour. The discovery of the hidden compartment in Gideon Locke's workbench, coupled with the wax trace and the missing notebook, had sharpened Poirot's focus. Now, new evidence from Japp's inquiries promised to unravel the fragile alibis of their suspects, bringing the truth tantalizingly close. Japp, his coat rumpled from a day of relentless investigation, spread a collection of papers across the table, his expression a mix of triumph and fatigue. "We've got something solid at last, Poirot," he said, tapping a report. "The lab results came in on Clara Wren's cleaning fluid. It's got traces of cyanide, mixed in with the usual compounds. Not enough to kill outright, but enough to raise questions. And Perkins found something at Tom Baxter's lodgings, a set of sketches hidden in a false bottom of that locked box you saw. They're near-perfect copies of Gideon's designs, down to the triple tumbler lock for Lord Ashby. Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his mustache twitching with anticipation. Magnifique, Inspector. The poison and the sketches, these are the levers that will pry open the truth. The cyanide in Mademoiselle Wren's possession suggests opportunity, but the sketches in Monsieur Baxter's box point to motive. We must confront them both with precision. Hastings, leaning against the mantel, frowned. Clara with cyanide? That's damning, Poirot. But Tom's sketches, those are practically a confession. Could they be working together, do you think? Poirot's fingers steepled, his mind racing. A partnership is possible, mon cher Hastings, but unlikely. The crime has the mark of a single hand, one that locked the door and hid the key to obscure its path. Let us begin with Mademoiselle Wren, for her cyanide is a thread we cannot ignore. They made their way to Clara Wren's cottage, the village now hushed as evening approached. Clara answered the door, her posture rigid, her eyes flashing with defiance. The parlor, as orderly as ever, seemed to close in around her, the air heavy with unspoken accusations. Poirot, his manner courteous but unyielding, gestured for her to sit. "Mademoiselle Wren," he began, his voice smooth as polished glass, "we have learned something most disturbing. The cleaning fluid in your possession contains traces of cyanide, the very poison that killed Monsieur Gideon Locke. How do you explain this?" Clara's face paled, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. "Cyanide? That's absurd. It's just a cleaning solution for silver and brass. I bought it from a chemist in Upper Renford months ago. I've never used it for anything else." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "And yet, mademoiselle, the chemist's mixture contains a poison that matches the method of Monsieur Locke's death. Did you perhaps visit his shop that evening, carrying this fluid, intending to confront him? Further?" Clara's voice rose, sharp with indignation. "I told you, I was home all evening. Elsie will confirm it. I had no reason to harm Gideon, no matter how he humiliated me. That fluid, it must have been tampered with, or the chemist made a mistake." Poirot's mustache curved slightly. "A mistake, you say, or a deliberate act? To cast suspicion upon you? Tell me, mademoiselle, did you ever speak of this fluid to anyone? To Monsieur Thorne, perhaps, or young Baxter?" Clara's eyes darted to the side, her fingers tightening. "No one. I keep my household matters private. If there's cyanide in that bottle, someone else put it there." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "We shall investigate this chemist, mademoiselle. But your alibi, it rests on your maid. And maids, they are sometimes persuaded by loyalty or fear. We shall speak with Elsie again." As they left the cottage, Hastings shook his head. "She's rattled, Poirot, but she's sticking to her story. That cyanide, though, it's too convenient to be a coincidence." "Oui," Poirot said, his cane tapping the path. "The cyanide is a bold stroke, but whether it is Mademoiselle Wren's or a plant to implicate her, we must discover. Now, let us turn to Monsieur Baxter, whose sketches betray a deeper ambition." They found Tom Baxter at his boarding house, pacing his small room like a caged animal. His face, already pale, grew ashen as Japp produced the sketches from the hidden compartment in his box. "Care to explain these, lad?" Japp asked, his tone stern. "These are Gideon's designs, copied down to the last detail. Planning to sell them, were you?" Tom's hands trembled, his voice breaking. I didn't mean any harm. I copied them to learn, to prove I could do it. Mr. Locke was holding me back, said I wasn't ready. I thought if I could master his designs, I could start my own shop. Poirot stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Tom's. Monsieur Baxter, ambition is a fire that can warm or destroy. These sketches, they are more than practice. They are theft. Did you take the notebook, perhaps to sell to Monsieur Thorne, or to use for your own gain? Tom's eyes filled with tears, his voice a whisper. I didn't take the notebook, I swear. I copied what I could from memory, from glimpses when he left it open. But I never touched it, and I didn't kill him. Poirot's gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. And the key, monsieur, the key to the shop door. You knew its design, its hiding place, perhaps. Did you use it that night to lock the door after poisoning your master? No, Tom cried, his hands clenching. I told you, I left at 6. The key was on Mr. Locke's chain, always. I don't know where it is. Poirot dismissed him with a nod, turning to Japp and Hastings as they stepped outside. The apprentice's sketches are a confession of intent, but not yet of murder. The cyanide in Mademoiselle Wren's cottage, it complicates the picture. We must verify the source of this poison. Did it come from the chemist, or was it placed to mislead? Japp rubbed his chin, his notebook open. I'll send Perkins to Upper Renford to question the chemist about that fluid, and we'll keep an eye on Tom. Those sketches make him look guilty as sin. Hastings, trailing behind, frowned. Poirot, it's all falling apart. Clara's cyanide, Tom's sketches, everyone's alibi has cracks. But that locked door, how did the killer manage it? Poirot's eyes gleamed with resolve. The door, mon ami, is the final lock in this puzzle. The key was hidden, not taken, to create the illusion of an impossible crime. We must return to the shop, for its secrets are not yet exhausted. The alibis unravel, and with them, the murderer's mask will slip. As they walked back to the inn, the village settled into dusk, its lights flickering like eyes watching their progress. Poirot's mind was a whirl of connections, the cyanide, the sketches, the hidden compartment, each a thread in a tapestry nearing completion. The truth, he knew, was but a step away, waiting for his little gray cells to seize it. Chapter 10. The Key's Hiding Place. The twilight over St. Mary's Mead draped the village in a hush, as if the very stones held their breath in anticipation. Hercule Poirot, his coat buttoned against the evening chill, stood once more in the shadowed interior of Gideon Locke's shop, his green eyes alight with the intensity of a man nearing the heart of a mystery. Captain Hastings and Inspector Japp flanked him, their faces reflecting a mix of hope and frustration. The revelations of cyanide in Clara Wren's cottage and the incriminating sketches in Tom Baxter's possession had tightened the net around their suspects. Yet the vanished key remained the pivot of the puzzle, mocking their efforts to unravel the truth. Japp, his notebook clutched like a talisman, paced near the workbench. "We're close, Poirot," he said, his voice taut. "Clara's cyanide, Tom's sketches, but that blasted key. Without it, we're still guessing how the door was locked from inside." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Patience, mon ami. The key is not lost, but hidden. Its absence is the murderer's final deception, designed to make us doubt the possible. Tonight, we shall find it, for Hercule Poirot does not accept defeat from a lock." Hastings, standing by the shelves, ran a hand through his hair. "But we've searched everywhere, Poirot. Drawers, shelves, the safe. If the key's here, it's invisible." Poirot's gaze swept the shop, lingering on the workbench where Gideon had died. The faint scratch, the wax trace, the hidden compartment, all pointed to a deliberate act, a plan crafted with precision. "The key, mon cher Hastings," he said, "is not invisible, but overlooked." The murderer locked the door, then concealed the key within the shop to create the illusion of an impossible crime. We must think as the murderer thought. He moved to the workbench, his gloved fingers tracing its edges once more. The scratch, with its precise arc, had suggested a key's outline, and the wax hinted at a mold. But the hidden compartment, empty though it was, had revealed the workbench's capacity for secrets. Poirot knelt, his eyes level with the underside of the bench, where shadows clung to the wood. His fingers probed a seam, barely perceptible, near the base of a leg. With a gentle press, a small panel clicked open, revealing a narrow cavity. Inside, nestled in a fold of cloth, was a single key, intricate, its teeth uniquely cut, matching the shop's door lock. "Voila!" Poirot exclaimed, holding the key aloft, its brass catching the lamplight. The vanished key, hidden not to be taken, but to deceive. Japp's jaw dropped, his notebook forgotten. "Blimey, Poirot, right under our noses. How did you know?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with triumph. "The murderer, Inspector, wished us to believe the key was stolen, to suggest an outsider's hand, but the locked door, the absence of forced entry, these pointed to someone with access, someone who knew the shop's secrets. This key was hidden here, in a place only a craftsman or his apprentice would know." Hastings, peering at the key, frowned. "So the killer locked the door after poisoning Gideon, then hid the key in that compartment. That points to Tom, doesn't it? He knew the workbench inside out." Poirot nodded, but his expression was cautious. "Monsieur Baxter is a strong candidate, but we must not leap. The key's hiding place confirms the crime's intimacy, but the cyanide, the notebook, these threads must also be tied. Let us test the key." He crossed to the door, inserting the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, the bolt sliding with a satisfying click. "Parfait," Poirot said. "This is indeed the key to Monsieur Locke's fortress. Its presence here, hidden, tells us the murderer remained in the shop after the act, locking the door from within before concealing the key." Japp rubbed his chin. "But why hide it? Why not take it and run?" Poirot's mustache curved. "To take the key risks discovery, carrying it, disposing of it. To hide it creates confusion, an illusion of impossibility. The murderer is clever, but not cleverer than Hercule Poirot." They returned to the workbench, Poirot's mind racing. The key's discovery shifted the puzzle's contours, narrowing the field of suspects. "We must reconsider the timeline," he said. "Tom left at 6. Gideon was alive. Death came between 7 and 9, by the doctor's estimate. The poisoner entered, added cyanide to the glass, locked the door, and hid the key. This suggests a visitor Gideon trusted, or someone who could move unnoticed." Hastings, still holding the cloth that had wrapped the key, noticed a faint stain on it. "Poirot, look at this. Blue ink, like the smudge in Tom's room and on the workbench." Poirot took the cloth, his eyes narrowing. "Excellente observation, Hastings. The ink links the key to the sketches, and thus to Monsieur Baxter. But we must also consider Mademoiselle Wren's cyanide. The chemist in Upper Renford, have we word from him?" Japp flipped through his notebook. "Perkins got a statement this morning. The chemist says he sold Clara that cleaning fluid, but swears it was standard, sodium hydroxide, no cyanide. If there's poison in it, someone added it after the sale. Poirot's fingers steepled, his mind weaving the threads together. So, the cyanide was introduced, perhaps to implicate Mademoiselle Wren. Yet Tom's sketches, his ink, his knowledge of the workbench, these are damning. We must confront him again, with the key in hand. They summoned Tom to the shop, the young man arriving with a hunted look, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. The sight of the key in Poirot's hand made him flinch, his eyes wide with fear. "Monsieur Baxter," Poirot said, his voice low and commanding. "This key was hidden in a compartment beneath the workbench, a place you, as apprentice, would know well. Explain this." Tom's voice trembled, his face ashen. I didn't hide it, Mr. Poirot. I swear I never touched that key. Mr. Locke kept it on him, always. I don't know how it got there." Poirot held up the cloth, the blue ink stain stark against the fabric. "And this ink, monsieur, it matches the smudge in your room, on your sketches. You copied your master's designs? Perhaps used this key to lock the door after his death. Speak the truth." Tom's knees buckled, and he sank onto a stool, his head in his hands. "I copied the designs? Yes, but I didn't kill him. I wanted to learn, to be like him. The ink, I used it for my sketches, but I never touched the key or the notebook." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Then how, monsieur, does the key lie hidden in a place only you and your master knew? And the notebook, where is it?" Tom shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "I don't know. I didn't take it. Please, you have to believe me." Poirot dismissed him with a wave, turning to Japp and Hastings. "The apprentice is close to breaking, but his denials ring true. In part, the key's hiding place points to him, yet the cyanide in Mademoiselle Wren's cottage complicates the picture. We must press further, Inspector. Search for the notebook, question the chemist again. The truth is near." Japp nodded, his expression grim. "I'll have Perkins turn Tom's room upside down again, and I'll lean on the chemist. If that notebook's out there, we'll find it." As they left the shop, the village clock tolled, its sound a solemn reminder of the hours slipping away. Poirot's mind, however, was a beacon of clarity, the key's discovery a turning point in the maze of deception. The murderer's design was unraveling, and Hercule Poirot was determined to expose its final secret. Chapter 11. The Final Confrontation. The village hall of St. Mary's Mead, a sturdy building of weathered stone, stood at the heart of the village, its windows aglow with lamplight against the deepening November dusk. Hercule Poirot, his posture impeccable despite the long hours of investigation, had chosen this neutral ground for the culmination of his inquiry into Gideon Locke's murder. The hall's oak-paneled interior, adorned with faded portraits of past mayors, lent an air of solemnity to the gathering. Poirot stood at the head of a long table, his green eyes sharp, his mustache perfectly aligned, as he prepared to unravel the tapestry of deception woven around the vanished key. Captain Hastings sat to his right, his face a mixture of anticipation and bewilderment, while Inspector Japp, his notebook worn from constant use, occupied a chair to the left. Around the table sat the three suspects: Silas Thorne, his burly frame tense and his eyes narrowed; Clara Wren, her hands clasped tightly, her expression a mask of indignation; and Tom Baxter, pale and trembling, his gaze fixed on the floor. The constable, Perkins, stood guard at the door, ensuring no one left before Poirot's revelations were complete. Poirot's cane tapped lightly on the floor, commanding attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and resonant. We are gathered to resolve the mystery of Monsieur Gideon Locke's death, a crime of poison, a locked door, and a vanished key. Each of you has a motive, a shadow of guilt, but only one holds the truth. Hercule Poirot shall now reveal it. He turned first to Clara Wren, his gaze piercing. Mademoiselle Wren, your grievance with Monsieur Locke was public, your pride wounded by his delay in crafting your lock. The cyanide found in your cleaning fluid suggested a darker intent. Yet, the chemist in Upper Renford confirms the fluid was tampered with after purchase. This was no accident, but a deliberate act to cast suspicion upon you. Your alibi, supported by your maid, holds, though with gaps. It is not the alibi of a murderer. Clara's shoulders relaxed slightly, though her eyes remained wary. I told you, Mr. Poirot, I'm no killer. Someone tried to frame me. Poirot nodded, turning to Silas Thorne. Monsieur Thorne, your rivalry with Gideon Locke was fierce, your business diminished by his skill. Your alibi, resting on the lights of your shop seen by Madame Carter, is fragile, for the back door offered a path to St. Mary's Mead. Yet, there is no evidence you entered Gideon's shop that night, nor possessed the means to poison him. Your desire for his designs was strong, but desire alone does not make a murderer. Thorne's scowl softened, his voice gruff. I didn't like the man, but I didn't kill him. You've got the wrong man. Poirot's gaze shifted to Tom Baxter, whose hands trembled visibly. Monsieur Baxter, you, the apprentice, were closest to your master. You knew his habits, his workbench, his secrets. The sketches in your room, copies of his designs, reveal ambition, perhaps greed. The blue ink on those sketches matches the smudge in the shop and on the cloth that hid the key. And the key itself, found in a hidden compartment beneath the workbench, a place only you, as his apprentice, would likely know. Tom's head snapped up, his voice breaking. I didn't kill him, Mr. Poirot. I copied the designs, yes, but I didn't touch the key or the notebook. Poirot raised a hand, his tone unyielding. Let us reconstruct, monsieur. Gideon Locke was poisoned with cyanide in his glass of water between 7 and 9 in the evening. You left the shop at 6, but your landlady, Madame Pike, confirms only that you were home by 6:30, leaving time for a return. The key, hidden in the workbench, was used to lock the door from within, creating the illusion of an impossible crime. The notebook, taken from the safe's hidden compartment, was your true prize. The designs you copied, intending to sell, perhaps to Monsieur Thorne. Tom's face crumpled, tears streaming down his cheeks. I wanted the designs. Yes. I took the notebook, I admit it. I thought I could use it to start my own shop. But I didn't poison him, I swear it. Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. You took the notebook, Monsieur Baxter, and you knew the workbench's secrets. The wax, the scratch, these were your attempts to mold a key, perhaps to practice your master's craft. But when Gideon suspected your theft, you acted. You added cyanide to his glass, a poison you obtained, perhaps, from a source we have yet to trace. You locked the door with his key, then hid it in the compartment to suggest an outsider's hand. The notebook you kept, hoping to profit from its secrets. Tom fell to his knees, sobbing. No, I didn't. I couldn't. His voice broke, and he clutched the table's edge. All right, I did it. I poisoned him. He found out about the sketches, said he'd ruin me, turn me out. I panicked. I got the cyanide from a jeweler's scrap in Upper Renford, mixed it in his water when he wasn't looking. I locked the door, hid the key. I didn't mean for it to go so far. Jap leapt to his feet, signaling Perkins. "Tom Baxter, you're under arrest for the murder of Gideon Locke." The constable moved forward, securing Tom's wrists as he continued to weep. Hastings, his eyes wide, leaned toward Poirot. "Good Lord, Poirot, you did it? But how did you know it was Tom, beyond the sketches and the ink?" Poirot's mustache curved, his voice low. "The key, mon ami, was the final clue. Its hiding place, known only to Gideon and his apprentice, pointed to intimacy with the shop. The ink linked Tom to the scene, and his sketches revealed a motive deeper than ambition: betrayal. The cyanide in Mademoiselle Wren's cottage was a clever misdirection, perhaps placed by Tom to shift suspicion. His confession confirms the pattern woven by the little gray cells. Clara Wren rose, her face pale but composed. "I knew I was innocent, Mr. Poirot. Thank you for seeing the truth." Thorne, still seated, grunted. "Lad fooled us all. Thought he was just a nervous pup." Poirot inclined his head. "The truth, it is often hidden in the simplest guise. Monsieur Baxter's ambition was his undoing, and the key, his fatal mistake." As Perkins led Tom away, the hall fell silent, the weight of the confession settling over the room. Poirot adjusted his hat, his expression serene. The mystery of the vanished key was solved, but one final task remained: to restore order to the village's shaken heart. Chapter 12. The Order Restored. The dawn broke over St. Mary's Mead with a gentle clarity, the mist of the past days giving way to a crisp, golden light that bathed the village in a serene glow. Hercule Poirot, standing at the window of his room at the Green Dragon, gazed out at the awakening streets, his mind at peace now that the mystery of Gideon Locke's death had been resolved. The confession of Tom Baxter, the apprentice whose ambition had turned to betrayal, had unraveled the enigma of the vanished key, and the village, though shaken, was beginning to reclaim its quiet rhythm. Captain Hastings joined him, his face still marked by the astonishment of the previous evening's confrontation. "I say, Poirot," Hastings said, settling into a chair with a cup of tea. "You had young Tom pegged almost from the start, didn't you? Those sketches, the ink, the hidden key, it all came together like clockwork." Poirot's mustache curved in a modest smile as he turned from the window, his green eyes bright. "Mon cher Hastings, the clockwork is the work of the little gray cells. Each clue, the scratch, the wax, the ink, was a note in the symphony of the crime. But it was the key, hidden in the workbench, that played the final chord." Inspector Japp entered the parlor, his usual briskness tempered by a rare air of satisfaction. He carried a small bundle of papers, the final reports of the case, and set them on the table. "Morning, Poirot. Hastings," he said, pouring himself a cup of tea. "Tom Baxter's locked up tight, and we've found the notebook, stashed in a loose floorboard in his room. It's got Gideon's designs, all right, and Tom's own notes on how he planned to sell them to a locksmith in London." Poirot nodded, seating himself with his customary precision. "Bon, Inspector. The notebook confirms the motive. Ambition turned to greed. But let us review, for clarity, how the pieces fit." He leaned forward, his fingers steepled, his voice clear and measured. Monsieur Tom Baxter, the apprentice, coveted his master's secrets. He copied designs from glimpses of the notebook, using blue ink that left its mark on his sketches and in the shop. When Gideon Locke suspected this theft, he confronted Tom, threatening to expose him. In panic, Tom obtained cyanide, likely from a jeweler's scrap, as he confessed, and added it to his master's water glass on the evening of the murder between 7 and 9. Hastings nodded, his eyes fixed on Poirot. And the key? How did he manage the locked door? Poirot's gaze was steady. The key, mon ami, was the genius of his deception. Tom knew the workbench's hidden compartment, a place only he and Gideon used. After poisoning the water, he waited for Gideon to drink, then locked the door with the unique key from Gideon's chain. To create the illusion of an impossible crime, he hid the key in the compartment, knowing it would be overlooked in our initial search. The wax and scratch on the workbench were traces of his earlier attempts to mold a key, perhaps to practice or to ensure access, but it was the original key he used. Japp scratched his chin, his notebook open before him. And the cyanide in Clara Wren's cottage, that threw us off. Oui, Poirot said, his tone soft but firm. A clever misdirection. Tom, knowing suspicion might fall on him, placed a small amount of cyanide in Mademoiselle Wren's cleaning fluid, purchased innocently from the chemist. This suggested her guilt, diverting our attention. But the key's hiding place, known only to those intimate with the shop, betrayed him. His sketches, his ink, his knowledge. These were the threads that wove his guilt. Hastings shook his head, a wry smile forming. Poor Clara. She must be relieved to be cleared. And Thorne? He's probably crowing about his innocence. Poirot's mustache twitched. Mademoiselle Wren's pride is restored, and Monsieur Thorne's rivalry, though bitter, was not murderous. The village will heal, but it will not forget the lesson of ambition unchecked. Japp closed his notebook with a snap. You've done it again, Poirot. I'll have the paperwork wrapped up by noon, and Tom's confession will make the trial straightforward. We found the jeweler in Upper Renford who sold him the cyanide scrap. Thought it was for cleaning, not killing. Poirot rose, adjusting his hat with care. The order is restored, Inspector. The truth, it is like a lock. It requires only the right key to open. And now, I believe, a walk through this charming village is in order to bid it farewell. They stepped into the morning light, the cobblestones glistening with dew. The village hall, where Tom's confession had echoed the night before, stood silent, its role in the drama complete. Clara Wren's cottage, its roses catching the sun, seemed less severe, while the distant sign of Gideon's shop swayed gently in the breeze, a reminder of a craftsman lost to betrayal. As they passed the shop, Hastings glanced at Poirot. Do you think Tom would have gotten away with it if not for that key? Poirot's eyes twinkled. No, mon ami. The little gray cells, they do not permit such chaos. The key was the murderer's mistake, and Hercule Poirot does not miss such mistakes. They continued their walk, the village resuming its quiet rhythm, shopkeepers opening their doors, children playing in the lane, the church bell tolling softly. The mystery of the vanished key had been solved, its secrets laid bare by Poirot's relentless logic. St. Mary's Mead, once more at peace, bore the mark of his triumph, a testament to the order he so cherished.